Hello, everyone. My name is Nathan Merkel. Welcome to Sports Stories, the podcast. This Sports Gator podcast will discuss different stories that we as humans have experience in, with, and through sports, hopefully providing context to the following questions. What makes sports so special? And how do sports impact us as humans? I'll dive headfirst into these questions through some critical conversations with a wide variety of guests on the show. With my current background in research and academia, I'll be looking to bridge the gap between practicality and research. I truly hope you enjoy the show. Thank you. Hey, everyone. Episode 2 will be a bit unique for this style and for this episode. The conversation with Brian is actually going to be cut into 2 episodes. To introduce this episode, this first one is going to cover who Brian is. Brian is a super fan of the MLB. He's a big fan of the Dodgers, and he's the current director of Camp Chen-a-Wanda, which is a sleepaway summer camp in Pennsylvania. This first episode will sort of introduce Brian's story, how his love for the Dodgers and all things MLB has shaped his life, and how he values life today, the nuances of baseball strategy, evolution and future of the MLB, the ABS system, and the human element. I hope you enjoy the episode. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining for another episode of Sports Stories, the podcast. My name is Nathan Merkel. This is season 2, episode 1 of Sports Stories. I'm really excited to do this kickoff episode of season 2 with Brian Leahy, the director of Camp Chen-a-Wanda up in Pennsylvania, and a self-proclaimed Dodgers MLB superfan. So, Brian, thank you so much for joining.
It's great to be here, man. Thanks for having me. Again, I'm Brian, and I don't know if I'd say Dodgers superfan, but I do live and die with every single pitch and game and second of Dodger baseball. And just as a side, because people are very judgmental about Dodger fans these days, dude, grandfather was born and raised in Brooklyn, was a Dodger fan, sneaking into Ebbets Field when he was a kid, and then he moved to California, where my dad grew up, my uncles grew up, and they were all Dodger fans. Then me and my brothers were all Dodger fans. So it's in our blood. We've been there our entire lives, and we've watched years of garbage. So if anybody's upset about how things are right now, I'm so sorry, and I feel you, but I keep it real. It's been a long time. So yeah, love me some Dodgers, love me some baseball, and happy to be here, man.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much. So I wanted to start off mostly like I do other episodes, asking a overarching like life story question. So the first question I have for you is, what's your personal journey or story through sports, and how can you paint us a picture of what that looks like?
Sure. I think it's a pretty, I don't know, standard classic kind of like American kid sports story. Like grew up my entire life playing, Little League baseball since I was a little kid, park and rec soccer. Like those are my 2 biggest sports. I've always loved sports. Sports has always been a big part of my life. It was always something that was fun to do regardless of just a pickup football game at recess as a kid or pick up basketball game at recess or whatever it was. But my 2 main sports were baseball and soccer, and played those all the way through high school. Fell in love with baseball more than soccer. No knock on soccer. Soccer's an amazing sport. I love playing that too. But I realized, as I was getting higher in high school, that I wanted to continue to pursue it, and really kind of, I don't know, I was that kid that identified myself as a baseball player. Like, so in high school, like, that's who I was and wanted to be. I wanted to be Brian the baseball player. And so I was fortunate enough to keep playing through college, played 4 years of college baseball in Southern California. Had dreams of not like playing for the Yankees or the Dodgers or anything, maybe like in like the deeper parts of my dreams, maybe fantasizing about that stuff, but just wanted to play professionally, see how far I would go, wanted to be a coach, wanted to coach college baseball is what I really wanted to do. Those things didn't pan out afterwards, and part of it was just like kind of luck. I ended up going to this summer camp that I'm now a director at and have been working for almost 25 years. Met my wife there, and just kind of made some decisions to go back to teaching. But when I did, sports has always still been there. I coached varsity baseball at my high school in California for multiple years. I coached my daughter's little league softball team and coaching her team for the last 5 years here in Florida. And sports, I would say, it is my number one hobby, my number one favorite thing to talk about. And I don't follow anything but baseball. People love picking my brain about other stuff. I am a very casual Lakers fan, like happy when they win, doesn't matter to me at all when they lose. Tracking what they're doing, watching what they're doing, and excited to see what the Lakers do. But like if they went to the NBA Finals, I probably wouldn't even watch it. Like I'd probably just be tracking it like online and watching like kind of like game day stuff. But baseball, it's everything for me. There's a famous quote from Rogers Hornsby that it's an old quote, and for those who don't know who Rogers Hornsby is, he's a Hall of Fame a baseball player, second baseman, maybe even played for your Cardinals, Merkel, if I'm not mistaken.
I think he did at some point.
So. But Rogers Hornsby played way back in the day, like in like the Babe Ruth days. But he had a quote where someone asked him one time, like a reporter asked him, "What do you do in the off season for baseball? What do you do in the winter when you're not playing?" Because back then, guys like would hold other jobs or do other things. Like, what were they doing? They weren't just like working out 24/7, getting ready for the season. His response has stuck with me forever. His response was, "I stare out the window and wait until spring." And that's me. Like when baseball season ends, I'm not excited for football season. I'm not excited for hockey, not excited for basketball. I am just looking at the next baseball news, getting ready for the season. So yeah, I live and die. I am a Dodger fan. It is my biggest passion, just following those guys and checking out games whenever I can. I'm a dad, so stuff's crazy with two kids, trying to watch games. But I watch as many as I can. Take my oldest daughter to games. I'll take my younger one when I think she's ready to come and start enjoying them too. But it's like a family thing, and it connects me and my brothers and my dad still to this day. It's the number one topic we talk about is baseball and Dodger baseball specifically. But yeah, that's my biggest thing. Love sports, really enjoy them, and love what you can get out of them, even if you're not a professional. You can really enjoy just following sports, talking sports, and just being a casual athlete, which is cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a beautiful story. And I had I really have two questions to follow up with you.
Yeah.
One of them was because you mentioned that you're sort of solely interested in baseball and baseball alone. What is it about baseball specifically that just like grabbed you? And
It's interesting, and I would say that the biggest part for me was probably being a player, like just understanding the game. And I think it's one of the biggest roadblocks that some people encounter with trying to follow any sport is if they didn't play it enough to like understand the nuance to it. Like for me, I'm on the edge of my seat with every pitch. I growing up, I played kind of every position just like you do when you're playing as a kid, but my main position was shortstop and pitcher. So when every pitch is being delivered, I'm watching every bit of it. I'm looking at the strategy behind every single pitch, and I'm looking at what happens, how you have to adjust that strategy if you don't execute your pitch the right way. And that's for the opposing team and for my team that I'm rooting for. And then as a hitter and a shortstop, I'm watching I'm watching what the infielders are doing and moving before every pitch. And I love watching it getting synced up when like every infielder like hops towards the plate at the exact same time, like ready anticipating a ball being hit to them. And like there's so many different things that can happen on a baseball field that are hard to describe to someone who didn't play growing up and doesn't understand that stuff. And it takes years of playing it. I'm coaching my 10-year-old daughter's little league softball team. We have just started discussing cutoffs, and we've kept it so simple. Like if it's hit to this side, shortstop, get your hands in the air, and hit to this side, second base. We're trying to talk about what the first baseman should be doing. We're like, we'll get there. Like let's just get a ball thrown here to get them to start to understand that. And just I don't know, you're very humbled when you coach like 5-year-old girls, like just how to hold the bat, how to run, which base is what, which direction should you be running, why should you. I'm sure everybody has seen like funny videos of like t-ball kids like hitting a ball and like running with the bat in their hands, or like just somersaulting their way around the bases
yep.
or not knowing where to go. There's so much to learn about the game. And so for me, because I learned that stuff, I love it. I love watching it. It just speaks to me. And I'm so the opposite of what, like, I don't know, most Americans are, who are like, oh, I like football is my top sport, which is like the number one sport here, and maybe basketball's second, maybe baseball's third. I don't know. It's debatable with what like ratings are or whatever. But I watch football. I am bored to death. I am bored to death with like the in between and like how much time is actually spent with like plays that happen. And people say that about baseball, but it's not how it registers for me. I'm watching every little movement and every little thing, but I also do appreciate the ebb and flow of like, okay, now my brain can take a break for a second in between innings and like take a breath, grab a drink, like here we go, get ready for the next thing. So yeah, I think playing it has made me appreciate all the different aspects of it and love it that much more. And it doesn't hurt when it's a family thing. Like my brothers all played Little League too. They did not all continue to play like the way that I did all the way through high school. One of them played through high school, the other two did not. But just it became our thing to be, a baseball family, a Dodger family, and that's kept us, really close, just talking about stuff. So I think understanding the game is a big part of it, but also just like having a bond with whether it's friends and family and like something that you enjoy talking about has been a big part of it too, I'm sure.
Yeah, I agree. I think I really agree that baseball is probably one of the most popular sports for families to get their kids involved in. When I was younger, I played baseball, and I played t-ball, and it was just, I think it was one of those like rites of passage that every child has to play t-ball.
Yeah.
But I would argue that not every child has to play flag football. Not every child has to play, soccer or whatever. I mean, I think baseball and soccer are the two most popular ones for kids.
Yep.
And it's really interesting, like thinking about it. Well, why is it that parents throw their kids into t-ball, but aren't the same like excited to throw their kids into football when, like you just said, football is basically the U.S.'s most favorite sport. So shouldn't it
Right.
actually be different?
Right.
Shouldn't parents be super excited to throw their kids into flag football? But
Right.
yet I feel like it's actually parents are throwing them into t-ball, and
Right.
that's how I started too. And I started playing t-ball, and I grew up left-handed, and as you know, the strategy of lefties, like usually they're going to be a pitcher, first base, or outfield. That's all you got.
Yep.
That's all
Yep.
you got. But I actually played shortstop when I was younger, and I was playing shortstop as a lefty, and I always was like really confused. And I would love to ask you this question, like, I was always confused as to why people were so shocked when I was like, "Yeah, I play shortstop. I'm left-handed." They're like, "What? Like, what? How does that make sense?" I'm like, "Well, I ground the ball and I throw it." Yeah, and but now, like when you're talking about strategy and things like that, like I get, because it's easier for a righty on angle to throw to first base, but a lefty usually has to pivot to throw.
Mhm.
And so that split second, I think, is what my thought is why people don't. And also maybe for double plays, because that would be kind of difficult to turn to, especially if it's for second base. How do you turn to? I don't know. It's kind of difficult. So I'd just love to hear your thoughts. Like, why don't you think we see any lefties at second, short, and third? Obviously, I think it's because of the angles, but just love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, baseball is notoriously referred to as a game of inches, and so it's so crazy how the dynamics of the field and how it's drawn up 90 feet for the bases and 60 feet 6 inches from the pitching rubber to home plate, like these very specific rules of like how a field should look, but then they're completely overlooked for like the outfield. That's just kind of like a cool, unique thing about baseball. It's like, well, outfield, we don't care. Like as deep as you want, as far
There's
as
a
you want.
cornfield. There you go.
It's about 330 feet down the lines. It's about 400 to center, but can be all over the place. There could be high walls, short walls. There could be angles. It's crazy. But for that infield part, it's got to be this exact thing, and the timing just works perfectly. Of like where you have to execute, you got to get rid of the ball, and just the flow of getting rid of the ball as a right-hander from shortstop, third base, and second base. Your body can flow naturally towards first base of throwing without having to turn your body too. So there's an advantage of being a left-handed first baseman of turning a double play to second because your right arm is facing second base, so you're throwing with your left arm across your body, but it's a natural flow to throw it over to second base. Right-handed first basemen have like an extra step they've got to take. They got to turn their body before they throw. Lefties would have to turn their body before they throw, and that not even a half second, that tenth of a second, 2/10 of a second can be the difference between safe and out on the highest levels. So in Little League, it is far more common. Like if you're good player, if your best player can do it, they're like, oh, well, this is the person who's best at catching the ball and throwing the ball. I don't care lefty or righty, they can do it. But I've seen and heard some like higher level hard coaches saying like, why are you wasting that kid's time at that position because they're never going to get a chance to play on the higher levels. And I think there's much debate you could discuss there because they can learn so much from playing that position and get joy from the game when they're 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 years old playing a position like that as a lefty, whether it's shortstop or catcher or whatever. So I get the arguments, but it all boils down to the time and the flow of the game, it takes a little bit longer for a lefty to get it across the diamond.
Yeah, I agree, and I think like at the elite level, I agree that those split seconds, as we know with the new ABS systems, all these sort of things, like the splits, the inches, the split seconds, all the like the minute details. I think that's very important. But I would argue that I feel like at some point another version of Shohei is going to come in and just be a left-handed shortstop and just whip it and like just be really good and defy all odds. And then all of a sudden more lefties are going to be like, oh my gosh, I can play infield. And I don't know, maybe that'll happen. Probably not. But maybe at some point there will be another like left-handed phenom that comes through and like makes it wow, like maybe lefties can play short.
Spoken like a left-hander.
Yeah, exactly. I'm trying to power to the lefty here, you know. So, that's great. I wanted to ask an overarching question. Is the second question I have for you is: do you think the MLB has gotten better or worse over the last 25 years?
Um, Okay, so I don't want to cop out on this question and say that there's good and bad, but there really is, and I've been a fan my whole life. First of all, when you ask that question, it really makes me feel old because in my mind, 25 years ago is the 80s, and it is not. It's just not. So like I'm like, wait, I actually have to pin this down. 25, all right, so 2001 until now. Okay, so. I think for me, there are absolutely things that have not improved, that have gone for the worse. I think that sports, professional sports, highest level sports, whether you are following MLB, NFL, NHL, NBA, Premier League soccer, like whatever your thing is that you're following, the the fun part about it is seeing like the best of the best play a sport and to be able to enjoy rooting for heroes. Like sports are games that are followed by kids and then adults who are like reliving that childhood and like and appreciating that. And so you're rooting for people, you're rooting for heroes, you're rooting for these people that can do these superhuman things. And a big part of being able to root for a human and like a hero is to be able to have like really cool people to follow and have it be fun. And I think that Major League Baseball, because of, I don't want to use like just the overarching theme of analytics, but because analytics took over baseball, starting in around that time frame, like early 2000s, those mid 2000s, that's where like the Moneyball era of the Oakland Athletics was, where you started to go, okay, if we do these three little things here, they're not super sexy or going to bring in the fans, but we could win four more baseball games during the season if we do this. And that started with, on base percentage and defensive shifts, but also really got into pitching. And this is my biggest thing, what I think has been a bummer for baseball, is the demise of the starting pitcher as like a star of the team. And I get it. If I'm running a multi-billion-dollar franchise and I know that from looking at the data is undeniable that bringing in a fresh arm for the sixth inning, throwing 100 miles an hour, which has been another thing that's really changed in the game, that you can track the data of going, guys absolutely throw undeniably harder now than they did 25 years ago. And they were throwing really hard then. So I know they were throwing harder than the 25 years before that, because the onus has become on like every pitch, every out, everything matters. And it does, but it takes away from these old school stories of your Bob Gibsons and your Sandy Koufaxes, and then even into the 90s with your Greg Maddoxes and your Randy Johnsons and your Pedro Martinezes. Like these were superstars that you were so excited to watch pitch because they would go as long as they possibly could. They had such a massive impact on the game, and you were expected to throw 7, 8, 9 innings. And it was a regular expectation that this guy was going to throw deep into this game and get the final out a big chunk of the time. And that helped make it really cool and fun to watch and fun to root for those guys. And now the game has evolved into, if your starting pitcher goes 5 innings and airs it out for those 5 innings, throwing as hard as he can for those 5 innings, you move on to the next guy because you're like, I know as soon as he goes to the lineup the third time, he's not going to be as effective. The analytics prove that even for the best pitchers in the world, and they're not wrong. But it makes it less exciting to me as a fan to be like, yeah, I love me some pitchers. Pitchers are some of my favorite players ever. As a guy who was a former pitcher too, and then to see like their impact lessened of the number of starts they make, is less than it was 25 years ago. The number of innings they pitch is way less than it was 25 years ago. And I don't think it has anything to do with their toughness. If you interviewed any pitcher, they would love to pitch to the end of the game. They did it in high school. They did it in college. Like, they love to get that final out. They love to air it all out there. But when millions and billions of dollars are at stake with every single out in those later innings, it's undeniable that you get tired if you're airing it out every single pitch. So I think that's been a bummer for baseball. I think it's hard to really have superstar starting pitchers chasing really cool numbers, which is another part of baseball. Like, baseball, I don't know. I followed stats and stuff as, like, I was an NFL fan as a kid, and I followed the NBA as a kid. But, like, numbers in baseball, I don't know. There's something special about them. Like, if I was to ask a fan who knows anything about baseball, like, what does the number 714 mean when you're talking about Babe Ruth? They're like, oh, that's how many home runs he hit. Like, I could, as a kid, tell you, like, the top 20 home run hitters of all time, just, like, going back through it and be like, okay, yeah, so Hank Aaron had 755, and then Babe Ruth had 714, and then Willie Mays had 660, and, like, work your way backwards. Like, these numbers mean something. Same thing for pitchers. 3,000 strikeouts, such a big deal. 300 wins, such a big deal. Now the question is asked, like, is anybody going to strike out 3,000 batters ever again for a career? Probably not. Is anybody, despite the fact that strikeouts are up, but just because pitchers don't pitch as long and they don't pitch as much to be able to do that, is any pitcher going to win 300 games again? Unless Verlander pitches until he's 50, no one else is. Like, no one. It's undeniable. You don't pitch as much. You don't pitch as long into the game to be able to qualify for wins to do that. So I think that's been a bummer. The last 25 years has been the demise of the starting pitcher. I think that the athleticism in the game, though, is incredible. Like, watching some of these guys and what they can do. Players have gotten faster. They throw the ball harder. They hit the ball harder. Just overall, even, not that they weren't dedicated to it back in the early 2000s. They were, as far as fitness and dedicating your entire life to it. But you continue to find ways to advance on how to maximize how you can work out and how you can be stronger at a game. It makes it just that much cooler to watch, like, a ball go farther, a ball go faster. The downside to that, and I do firmly believe in this, the game has become more boring to a casual fan, and maybe even to me too, because pitchers can throw harder than ever, which means strikeouts are through the roof. Which is also included because batters are instructed that a double, a triple, a home run is more valuable than a single, and it is. But, like, we'd rather have you strike out twice in a game if it results in a 1 or 2 extra base hits because you're swinging out of your shoes. That's more valuable to a team in the long run. Cool, but it results in a lot of strikeouts, which can be really boring to watch if you're casually watching. Now, if you're rooting for a pitcher, yeah, you love seeing a pitcher strike people out. But because pitchers throw so hard now, it is so difficult for a hitter, and batting averages have plummeted in the last 25 years of how often the ball is put in play in a way that gets them a hit. So I think that has been a bummer for the game. I think overall, the game is in a good place right now as far as entertainment, and the data shows that with the last World Series, and the data shows that with the ratings for World Baseball Classic, and how hyped up just globally the game has become in the last 25 years. We've really done a great job of tapping into Japan, which is this, not just a baseball powerhouse of good players, but just arguably the most passionate country for the game of baseball. And now that passion has flowed over into the United States. If they've got these big superstars over here, that they're excited to see their players come and excel here. And so that's helped grow the game more. Same thing for other, like, baseball crazy countries like the Dominican Republic or Cuba, or other, like, South American countries that are huge into baseball. It's continued to grow, and we've continued to find the best players in those countries. So we've continued to get awesome, amazing players, and that's been great. And the talent is the best it's ever been, and there's some really exciting stuff. But the superstars drive everything. And so right now, it's really cool with a couple of really cool superstars that are in the game. Shohei Ohtani, Aaron Judge, and then you can work your way down to other guys that are really fun to watch too. But those two obviously are, like, the two big faces right now. And they're fun to watch because they're doing kind of superhuman things. So I think that's awesome. And there's some really cool things going on. Some little improvements have been made that we can get into about, rule changes and stuff. But I think overall, if I was to, discuss my memories of watching the game 25 years ago and just the overall, I don't know, public consensus on baseball, it overall it'd probably be that it was probably better 25 years ago than it is today for those little things about pitching, about strikeouts, about kind of like what that looks like for the game. But I would still make the argument that it's in great shape right now, and it's a really fun product to watch right now.
Yeah, I agree. I think it is actually also very fun too. And one thing that I've also been very curious about is I remember it was probably like 5, 10 years ago or so when the Cardinals used to be very good, and they've unfortunately jumped off of a cliff and have gotten away from a lot of from their identity the past few years. And I think once our superstars left, like Wainwright and Molina and Pujols and all that stuff, it just started to basically just implode. But they're rebuilding at this point. So, but I remember watching them like religiously the last, like, it was like 10, 15 years ago. And like, I agree, every game was exciting. And I don't know, for some reason, I think something shifted, maybe for me personally, but also think just for people in general. My thought I wrote this down is like, I feel like generally speaking, general baseball fans are more interested in postseason baseball than they are in regular season baseball. And I think that's common amongst probably every sport, obviously, because the playoffs is the best of the best, playing the best of the best. Literally every second does count, every pitch counts. But the thing is what I think you've alluded to, and I think presented really well, is like, well, every pitch counts in the regular season. In order to get to the playoffs, you have to do well in the regular season. And so that I think there's a lot of people out there that think maybe there's too many games in the regular season to keep up with. Maybe there's just not enough attention. I don't know. What do you think about that? Do you think there's too many games for like the general public to just like follow? It's 162 games. Like that's a lot of games. So
Yeah, well, especially with the amount of competition that's out there now for entertainment. I mean, at the end of the day, sports are entertainment,
right.
and that's what they're there for. So the amount of stuff that is competing for our attention constantly is greater than it's ever been. And there's access to everything at your fingertips. And that's still a relatively new phenomenon. So that is something that every sport is trying to battle with, of like, how do we keep everyone's attention? And I don't think there's any easy answer to it. I know that not I know. My gut tells me that the odds of there ever being a substantially shortened season will never happen because they make money off those games still. They even Marlins games, no knock Marlins. I'm down here in Florida. I'll go to some Marlins games during the year every year. But like for even for them that are only getting 10,000 people to show up to the stands, that's still people showing up, that's still people spending money, that is still TV rights stuff happening, that's still revenue sharing stuff happening because of those games. I don't think either the owners or nor the players in their next collective bargaining agreement or any future collective bargaining agreement would even want to open the conversation of let's have fewer games because we think this will be better for the game as a whole because people will be more locked in. Like the NFL, has what 17 games. It's an event. It's a special event once a week for your team on Sundays or Monday nights or I don't know. There's like Thursday games now or whatever it is, but like it's so much more unique and special to be locked in on those games. But I'm sure the NFL is very jealous of MLB's 162 games. A home team gets 81 games during the season. That revenue is through the roof. And yes, there's more interest in an individual regular season football game, but 81 home games for a baseball team, that revenue is undeniable. So I think money will talk there. So I doubt any changes we made. But if I could wave a magic wand and go back 100 years, 150 years, and go, guys, trust me, just play 80 games. Like you'll
Yeah.
be good. Like the fans will love it. The fans will absolutely love it. They will. I wish I could do that 100 something years ago. It's way too in deep right now and ingrained in what the culture of how they make money in this entertainment industry. So I don't think that'll go anywhere. But I agree. Even I would feel better. It'd be a nice reprieve to be like, okay, I don't have to like watch 6 straight days of baseball to stay in tune with my team. I
Right.
can get a break and like just to be excited about the 2 games a week that they play or whatever it is. So yeah, I agree. Less games would be great. I don't think it's ever going to happen just for
Yeah,
financial purposes.
I agree with you. Unfortunately, I think two things. I think the I think the overall the capitalistic nature of our country, of the U.S. And of just North America in general, with every sport and every sport league, yeah, would never allow would never allow that.
No.
Because unfortunately, the way that sport is ran, even down to the youth level, I'm sure you've seen this yourself, is very profit heavy
Yep.
and not as much like community driven, which I think is where sport overseas is focused. And I've actually heard a lot of. I actually did a previous episode with a guy from Australia who came over and play and was the punter for a football team, and he was like, "Man, the biggest change was like how much money there is in sports here." And
Yeah.
he was like, "At home, it's just community provided. Everybody can play. It's one of those things. Like it's a very family oriented. But here, it's just like there's so much money everywhere, and
Yeah.
it's really interesting to me." And I wanted to ask one more question, then I'll switch to another question that I've got. But
Yeah.
do you think I saw? I think it was a there's a graph a while ago that said America's favorite football team isn't the Dallas Cowboys anymore; it's the Kansas City Chiefs. And this data had me thinking. I was like, okay, well, is America's pastime sport still baseball, or is it now football? And I'm curious if you think, do you think baseball is almost sort of falling in that sense of America's pastime? Do you think it's now football? I don't know. What do you think?
Look, I think as a whole for the United States, it's undeniable that the NFL is a sport that they get the most hyped up over.
Hmm.
Again, as I mentioned earlier, I'm not a fan of the NFL, and it
Yeah.
actually bores me. And I used to like it when I was a kid. I was a big 49ers fan in the 90s, and so I could still talk about the guys that I loved watching back in the 90s: Ken Norton Jr. and Merton Hanks and Deion Sanders and Steve Young and Jerry Rice and Ricky Waters. Like I haven't thought about those names in forever, but just you mentioning it, like thinking about it, like, yeah, I used to really be a big fan. But undeniably, the United States loves the NFL, and it is unique to our country. I think it's a big
Right.
part of it too, where it's like, yeah, this is our sport. There's
Right.
nowhere else that plays at that level. There's a Canadian Football League. Like, all right, go Argonauts. Like, it's just not the same level of extreme fanaticism that the United States has for the NFL. And so that is, our sport. I still love, like the name of national pastime. It can mean so many things. Like it is, you look back, like it was the number one thing that sports fans would look to in the early 1900s and all the way through like the mid the 20th century. Like that was what drove sports, and NFL has definitely surpassed it from a popularity perspective here. But from a global perspective, the NFL hasn't caught on. Like you're not going to talk to a guy from Japan who's going to be like, "Oh yes, and also my favorite team is the Rams."
Yeah.
Like they're not. They don't care. They don't. The NFL hasn't translated globally the way the baseball has. And so baseball still has its footing globally with so many countries that are so passionate about the sport. So yeah, overall, football for sure
Yeah.
has surpassed it as a national pastime. But to your point, you were talking about the Cardinals and like being into it and then like being bummed about how things go. Yeah, that's the reality of being a sports fan. It really, and it wouldn't be as fun without that.
Right.
The bitter ain't as sweet without, or I'm sorry, the sweet ain't as sweet without the bitter, right? So, as a very spoiled Dodger fan the last couple of years, it may seem like, oh, it's always been that way. It hasn't. The Dodgers won a World Series in 1988. I was 8 years old. I don't remember it. I don't remember watching it. My dad was in the Marine Corps and he was out in the field at the time, so he wasn't even around to be like, let's watch the game. So we didn't watch a single game. So I don't remember that at all. And then nothing until 2020, which many people were like, of course, like, does it even count? Like, I cried. I wept when the Dodgers won the World Series in 2020. Wept. Like, it was a big deal. And it was a very big deal to me because it had been 35 years, since they had last won, 32 years, whatever it was, since they had last won a World Series. And I was just in pain for 30 plus years watching them either finish dead last many times, like in the early 90s or early 2000s or mid 2000s, or go to the playoffs and just get dominated. They went like a decade plus between winning a playoff game. And it made it that much sweeter when they won in 2020 and then 2024, 2025. But there's ebbs and flows. Like I'm a realist with being a Dodger fan, where I'm like, this era right now that I'm in, this like Shohei Ohtani era, it will end and it'll end ugly. And then they'll be irrelevant for a while. No matter how much money they spend, they will be. That's the way it goes. You, as a Cardinals fan, and not maybe you per se because of how old you are, but
Yeah.
Cardinals fans,
Yeah.
Cardinals fans, I don't know. I want to say the Cardinals have won 9 World Series, maybe
Yeah.
11.
I
Like
think it's a
there's
lot.
a good chunk. It's like the second most, I think, in history
Mhm.
behind the Yankees. But the Cardinals were a big part of that is the luck of who they got. They have two out of the three best first basemen in history. They got 20 years of Stan Musial and won World Series during that time frame. They got the 10 best years out of Albert Pujols and won, I think, 2 World Series during his time in 2006 and 2011, if I'm not mistaken. But like they rode those superstars during their time and surrounded them with some other good talent too. And then those guys were no longer playing, and then you're trying to adjust, and like you're not going to get another Stan Musial, you're not going to get another Albert Pujols, and me being a Dodger fan, like there's similar stuff that we've gone through and watched and seen some of our superstars, and it's been really fortunate and cool. But that doesn't always happen. Injuries happen. Guys chase other contracts. Stuff doesn't always work out. So yeah, there's ebbs and flows as a fan that you got to be willing to ride out sometimes. And to the Chiefs, yeah, the Chiefs have been super relevant. They have Pat Mahomes, like so. Yeah, I bet there's a ton of fans now following that team. That'll change when Pat Mahomes is gone. Who's talking about the Patriots? I know the Patriots have had some recent success, but when Tom Brady was on the Patriots, I would argue like that was America's team because Tom Brady was on the Patriots. That's going to end. And when it ended, they weren't as good and no one cared. So that stuff does happen with ebbs and flows with just how professional sports goes, with how good guys are. So
Yeah.
yeah, we'll see if baseball ever overtakes NFL again. I doubt it. It's just such a popular sport, the NFL, but you never know.
Yeah, I really agree with that. And I think the downsides of sports is what makes the good sides good. You know, like
After that.
the amount of failure you go through as a team and as a fan, I think makes the winning, like one win, that much more meaningful and beautiful. And so I
Totally.
really agree. And even though like the Cardinals are in this area of rebuilding and sort of confusion and loss and all these things, I think there's still a lot of hope out there because I think as you said, the Cardinals are a historic team and they have a very decorated past, and I think the
And an
expectation,
amazing fan base.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I think yeah, there's an expectation from the fans, an expectation from the owners, and also an expectation from the players, like to wear the jersey, and so I think there is that sort of hope that at some point it will ebb and flow, um, and things will turn. I wanted to switch to you mentioned a bit ago about rules and different sort of things that are being implemented into the game. This next one, it got implemented this year. Do you agree with the ABS ball strike system? And I watched a little bit of the preseason of spring training, and how it almost felt like almost every pitch batters were like, "Yep, challenge," almost every one. And then I watched another couple of games recently, and like there's umps that are just getting fully exposed. I know CB Buckner is an ump that is getting exposed pretty harshly right now because he's a controversial ump, and I would have loved to see. I don't know if is Angel Hernandez still umping. If he is, he would
He's
not
not.
be
He's
surprised.
not. He. If he was, you'd know.
Yeah, yeah,
You would
exactly. And I feel
know.
like it would not. I think it's a good time that he decided to stop umping because of this, because I think he would have. It would not be good, and I'm just curious what your thoughts are on the ball strike system.
Yeah, I like it. I'm a person who, as perhaps it's the player in me that makes me so passionate about this. I just want the call to be right.
Yeah,
I want the right call to happen. I don't want an umpire to be able to take over a game. I don't want fans to be talking about after a game of like, well, if the umpire hadn't this, that, or the other. That's a frustrating thing for sports, and that does happen in all sports. I've seen lots of stuff where NFL, like an interpretive call gets made, and that's how the game ends, and everyone's like, what? Like that shouldn't be what we're talking about. You should be talking about, is Pat Mahomes amazing? Did he come through or did he not? Like that should be the conversation in a big Chiefs game, not what call did the ref make? And I think the same thing for MLB. You want to get the calls right, and I think that's all sports. Tennis, I actually think MLB might be using like the same system that tennis has been using for years, like the Hawkeye system
Oh yeah.
of like being able to track like the how fast a ball is going. Like that's impossible for a human eye to call in a tennis match how hard these guys are hitting a ball if it is this much on the line or is it this much off the line. So they have a system in place that helps them with those calls. And I think the ball moves so fast in baseball and the ball's being thrown so much harder in baseball now that behind the plate is the hardest part of the
Yeah.
job. I think out there in the field, umpires undeniably do a good job. And these guys are trained and they are the best of the best and they earn their paychecks. But you put them behind home plate and it becomes really challenging because every hitter's strike zone is different and they have to adjust that. They as a human being, that's so tough to do. And I'm fine with like the, tiny errors and like the, the rounding errors of calling a strike zone. But the egregious calls that sometimes happen, I think there needs to be something in place to help with that. And I think that this is a pretty good idea to do it. I mean, to your point about it, looking at calls get challenged all the time. They don't. They have a limit. They have a limit. Like they have 2 challenges, and if they get them wrong, that's it. And there's strategy to it that I didn't even think about. But like teams are saying, number one, pitchers, shut your mouth. Do not even try to challenge because your body is moving and you're emotional behind it. Because I think that's my pitch and that should be a strike. So the majority of teams have told their pitchers flat out, no, you are not the one to challenge. The catcher knows the zone better. We will let our catcher challenge it. And then batters are allowed to challenge it. But I've seen some interesting stuff. I've seen some games as a Dodger fan where I'm like, and I have the benefit of seeing the strike zone on TV. And I'm like, oh my God, challenge it. And then the batter doesn't because he's either afraid of like, maybe he's a younger player. And he's like, I don't want to lose a challenge for my team. So I just suck it up and I just get out of here. So it is an interesting thing, but I don't know if it was intended or not, but the unintended benefit, and I've been to a game live this year. I went out and flew up for the home opener for the Washington Nationals. Dodgers happened to be in town, which is why I was there. But watching it happen in real life, when a home team pitch challenge goes their way, they go nuts. They go nuts. So this unintended benefit of like now a new entertaining piece of the game of them going crazy and yelling at the umpire or whatever. But like, there's nothing to yell about. It's like, here's the call. We got the call and they got it right at the end of the day because of the challenge. So I think as a whole, it's the right thing for a game as there is for any game that you want the calls to be right. I'm not a gambler. Like I mean like zero. I've never placed a sports bet in my life, not even with a friend with a handshake. And I know that sports betting is a big part of the popularity of sports in the United States right now. And I think the last thing you want when your industries are tied to those things is for people who aren't playing the game to have a say in that and to have some guy who is calling balls and strikes behind the plate who is not making the $70 million a year that Shohei Ohtani is making, for that guy to get to dictate which team wins based on his own call. I think nobody wants that. So I think trying to get the calls right is important. There's a balance to it, of course, but I do agree with what they've done so far. It looks like it's been a success. The fans have enjoyed it, and more right calls are happening. So I think I can't find a flaw in that. I could probably find a flaw, and so will MLB. And like, is it 2 challenges? Is that the right thing? Is it 3? Does it open up in the 9th inning of like, so that we don't end a call? Like, I don't know if you follow the WBC, but the United States beat the Dominican Republic in a very tight game, a very close game that the world was watching, and the United States won on ball
Yeah.
4
Yeah.
that the umpire called a strike. And a game shouldn't end that way. Like, even as a guy who was like rooting for the U.S. there, like I was like, ooh, I wasn't celebrating it. I was like, yuck. Like that's what they're gonna talk about, and that's what they did. The Dominican players were like, great game, but we got screwed, and they did. So you want to get it right. So that's my take on it.
Yeah, that's it is quite interesting, and not being as passionate a baseball player, and but I think just thinking of the structure of the sport itself, I sort of take, I feel like, a little bit of a different viewpoint. And this is what we've argued in the past. Is like I do agree with your point that I do want the right call, but I think at what point does that right call diminish the human aspect of the game? Because I think the viewpoint that I normally have that we've argued in the past is like how much technology and ABS support and to get the right call can you implement into the game, but then take away just the natural human part of the game itself. And so to your point, like, yeah, the game ended on a bad call, but humans are humans, humans ump and humans ref, and refs make mistakes. Maybe I know in the past, like the strategy of the pitcher, I think I've heard this. I don't know if you said it or someone else in the past, but like I used to hear or think that like the strategy of the pitcher wasn't the batter, it was the ump. And like what has the ump been calling? What pitches can I get away with? What can't I get away with? How can I flirt with that line? And how do I get it to where the ump will call it for me? And now I think that is being diminished because of the system. And so I think that's that sort of strategy. My thought is that that's getting reverted back to like just the natural part of the strike zone to get the call right. But then again, I think that changes the dynamic and the strategy of now pitchers are being forced to just throw strikes, get the pitch right, and not really worry about the ump because the catcher can challenge it, and
Yeah.
so I don't know. I'd love to hear what you think about that.
Well, I mean, I've three different perspectives on umpires. I have my perspective as a player, I have my perspective as a fan, and I have my perspective as a coach.
Hmm.
So, as a coach, both coaching varsity level players in high school, down to coaching 5-year-old girls to now 10-year-old girls. My philosophy as a coach is to tell players like you can't control what an umpire referee does, and all of us have seen a bad call. You move on. You got to move on. You can't let that dictate the game. There's 1,000 other things that happened in that game that we could have had control over. Control what you can control. And I think most coaches will philosophize the same way of like focus on what you can control. Don't get caught up in an umpire. If you're a player, if we're going to argue something, let the coach argue it. And there are things there's times where even with like last season, my daughter was 9 years old. I went out and I argued with an umpire. I am very calm as a coach for Little League. Like it should be a calm thing, a fun thing for little kids to play. But umpires blew a call on just a rule. Like there was a pop fly, and so forgive me if you're not tracking like what this rule will be. But there was a pop fly in the infield. Went up, it landed in fair territory, had a lot of backspin, and then spun out of play down the left field line, and nobody touched it. It just boom, it hit and it spun, and umpires calling a fair ball, and I'm yelling like as soon as it started rolling foul, I'm yelling at my pitcher. I'm like, don't touch it! I'm like, don't touch it! Don't touch it! Don't touch it! Because she has no chance of getting the player out at first. She was running as soon as it was popped up, and so she didn't touch it, and it rolled foul. And umpire was pointing fair, and the girl just kept running. And so my players were all confused. Girl kept going and ran for a home run, and the umpire was like, "Run scores." I went over and I talked to him, and I was like, "Hey, can we call the other umpire over? We got to get this call right. I go, that's a foul ball, and you need to understand how that rule works. The ball has to be touched in fair territory or go past first or third base before going foul to be considered a fair ball. So it didn't, and it rolled. That's a foul ball, dude." And he was like, "What?" And then we called the other umpire over, and he got it right. And so the other team, like the fans who don't know the rule very well, were booing and yelling at me because I overturned this call. But I was like, just getting the call right, guys. Just getting the call right. But I'm not going to argue balls and strikes. I've been upset at balls and strikes with umpires. I know it's hard to do. I've umpired. It is so hard. It's so hard to call balls and strikes. The ball moves so fast. I mentioned, my three takes as a coach: move on, don't argue with the umpire. It's part of the game. It is what it is. But I'm not coaching the Yankees. I'm coaching the Wellington Gators. Like, who cares for this guy that's making $50 to come and umpire for us? I will kiss his feet. I'm so happy that he's there so we can play a game. My take on umpires as a player, I used to say this all the time, is I've never met an umpire I didn't hate. And that was my entire life. From as soon as like I cared about the outcomes of games, starting in, I don't know, probably middle school, all the way through high school, all the way through college. Like I hated umpires, and because I always felt like yes, I wanted calls to go my way, but I refused to accept the outcome of them getting a call wrong when I did it right. If I executed the pitch and he called it a ball, if I made the diving play and he said no, that ball hit the ground, like if I hit a home run and he said no, that was foul, like I'm like, I'm the human that matters in this game, not you. And so my take as a player, to your point about the human element, the humans we should care about are the ones playing the game. So for me, as much as it may seem weird, and I don't want robots on the field, I don't want, like these Chinese backflipping, karate kicking robots to take the field and have them, calling balls and strikes. I don't want that. Like, I do want humans there, and I know that there's interpretation, and I get that. But at the end of the day, I want the overwhelming majority of the outcome of a game to come down to the elite athletes that I'm paying money to watch. I'm not paying to watch Angel Hernandez. If the
Really
other
take
argument that
over the
I've
game. Yeah.
yeah, totally. Well, the other argument that I've made is, as a fan, now here's my third take. So, player, I hated umpires because if they could take away something I worked so hard for, then they shouldn't even be there. And as a fan, my argument has always been to anybody who talks baseball is that if we know the umpire's name, then he's not doing his job. We shouldn't know his name. We shouldn't know who Angel Hernandez is. But he was such a bad umpire at the highest level. We know who he is. And I can go back to, like, I want to say like 19, maybe it was 1997 NLCS. Levon Hernandez had like a 15 strikeout game to beat the Braves. Eric Gregg took that game over as the umpire behind home plate. And credit to Hernandez, who saw that and was like, well, I could throw the ball 4 inches off the plate right now, and this dude's going to call it. Kudos to him. But if you're a Braves fan for that game, you're like, this dude ripped our legacy away from us. Like, people talk about the Braves as like this choking team in the 90s that only won one World Series despite 14 consecutive years going to the playoffs. Like, that took their dynasty away. Well, they had a game in the NLCS that was ripped away from them. Go back and watch that footage sometime. I'm telling you, you will laugh so hard at watching these calls this guy Eric Gregg was making. They were out of control. He was caught up in the moment, and he just was calling pitches that were laughably off the plate. And it won it for the Marlins. They ended up winning the World Series that year, and the Braves did not. And Eric Gregg's a big part of that. And I'm not a Marlins fan or a Braves fan. I have no stake in it. And I remember as a 17-year-old watching that going like, oh my God, that's horrible. That can't happen. So I think that there has to be a balance of having our umpires out there, sure, that human element. But the thing I would disagree with you on is I do care about the human element, the humans that are playing. Those 52 guys on those two rosters that are playing that we are paying to watch, we care about what they are doing. I care about the umpire getting the call right, even if they call it wrong at first. I'd prefer a wrong call, play happens, whatever. Umpires get together and go, no, let's get this right. Let's make sure that this is the right thing, that we are stewards of the game and that the game gets played the right way rather than taking over a game. And I think that has happened less and less, where umpires can take over a game. And I think that this ball strike thing is a big step in the right direction. I think so much of the other stuff is part of the game, and it's not as hard to call. A foul ball, a fair ball, a catch, those aren't as hard to make a judgment on as a ball and a strike. That's really hard to do when Jose Altuve is this tall and Aaron Judge is this tall. Like, that's hard to
reminds me of reminds me of backyard baseball. What's his name? Pablo Sanchez, I think was his name. The tiny, like the Pablo Sanchez, like it just reminds me of like the strike zones and all that stuff like that. It's really funny, and I really agree with you on all the points that you're making. And I think the perspective, since I'm just not, I think it might just be because I didn't play at high of a level. I played, I think, like my first year of high school, and I was like, yeah, all right, this just ain't for me. I just wanted to run, and that's where I played soccer. I just wanted to run and do stuff, and but now that I'm older and hopefully I'm a bit wiser, but I think the strategy behind baseball is so intriguing to me, and I think it's really interesting with umps and all these things. And like you said, if you know an ump's name, they did their job wrong. And I agree with like the CB Buckner and Angel Hernandez. Like, the only reason why we know them is because they suck notoriously. So,
tell me who the best umpire in Major League Baseball is.
Yeah, the one
you shouldn't know.
The ones we don't know, they're not, yeah, whoever they are, they're unknown.
Totally.
Because they did great. And I remember there's a couple of like graphs that come out, I think, that shows an umpire's accuracy for a game, that sheet. And like I've seen in the playoffs, like people like John Boy Media on YouTube that make all these videos. He comes out and posts a thing. He's like, this is a great game, but I want to show how good the ump was. But you don't realize how good they were because you don't you just think the game is so good, but
Just happened.
the
Yeah,
ump
game just happened.
allowed was so good that the game was good, you know? And so like that's where I'm like, wow, that actually makes a lot of sense. And like when the game is really good, that usually means the ump is also very good, and he's allowing the game to be focused on the players and not them. And that is, I think, such a beautiful and very difficult thing to do with, like you said, with players now throwing 100 miles an hour. Like it's like they're like point 1 seconds or whatever. Like how do you even register that as an ump, and also as a batter? Like that's still nuts, absolutely crazy to me how people
Yeah,
hit these fastballs or
it's
the
crazy.
Paul Skeens 102s, and
It's
it's like,
crazy.
how do you even like? You have to basically have to swing before he releases the ball at that
You
point.
do.
It's
You
like,
do. And not just basically, you have to. You have
yeah,
to start your swing before that ball is released. You have to be starting it. What we coach even our players with slow softball stuff, it's windmill, but it's slower pitches,
yeah,
is your approach has to be yes, 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 no.
yep,
Like it has to be like, I'm getting ready to, nope, and I'm getting ready to, nope, and yes, 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 and I'm finishing the swing. Like you always have to be ready to swing or you're never going to get it done in time. It's a crazy thing to do. And I don't fault an umpire for missing a 92-mile-an-hour splitter
yeah,
that dropped off the table and fell an inch below the strike zone. And for him to call that a strike, I bet it looked like a strike. I bet it really did, especially if the catcher's great at framing too, which is a
yeah,
different thing to discuss too. But I will say, like, something that you said, it resonated with me about like, you know, strategy changing for pitchers like they used to pitch like
yeah,
like a Greg Maddux guy used to be like,
yeah,
all right, this umpire is giving me an inch off the plate. I'm gonna try to get an inch and a half. I'm gonna try to get 2 inches. And that's beautiful for that era of the game. Cool thing about baseball, and I'm sure sports in general, is the game adapts. The game adapts and it does change. Sometimes it changes based on rules, and sometimes it changes based on the players, like the type of play that's happening. In the mid 80s, stolen bases were in vogue. Ricky Henderson stole 130 bases. You're a Cardinals fan, but you weren't born in this guy's time. But Vince Coleman was insane to watch. He was actually a very bad baseball player. Yeah, like if you look back at his stats, like hitting, fielding, like he wasn't a good baseball player, but that guy was so fast. And whenever he got on base, the dude would steal. Coleman was regularly stealing 100 bases in a season because that was how the game was played then. And in the 80s, it was more about get on base and steal. That's the value. We're valuing stolen bases. It's a big deal. And stolen bases were through the roof. The game has changed since then. And people can absolutely argue like better or worse whether it has, but the game has changed and steals aren't as valuable now unless you are really good at it. An out is so valuable to risk that out if you're stealing at a 75% clip and at 1 out of 4 times you're thrown out, you don't want to do it. So yeah, the game does evolve in different ways, and I would make the argument that as beautiful as that was, and I'm a big Greg Maddux fan, loved watching him pitch. He was just the professor, man. He was just amazing. But I would make the argument that yeah, a guy like that today probably couldn't exist because he
yeah,
couldn't be getting a strike call 3 inches off the plate. And so he was beautiful for his time, and it worked for then. And I'm okay with it not working now. It's a different conversation for me as far as like valuing control over velocity. I think that change could happen in our lifetime where analytics prove that it is a gift to be able to throw a strike like to where you want to throw it. People are always like, why can't they just take some off and just throw like Maddox? Maddox was a freak. He was a freak to be able to pinpoint throw a baseball. And people are like, we threw so soft. Not really. In the mid 90s, he was throwing 92 and throwing where he wanted to. As he got older, he pitched till he was like 44. So yeah, he was throwing 85 then, but that's because he was 44 and sticking around. But when in his prime, he was throwing in the 90s with great movement, which people don't give him all the credit for. It's his movement was incredible too, and so was his accuracy. But he was a gifted freak individual to do that. You can't just teach someone. I think you could probably do better at teaching velocity, getting them stronger, than you can teach to throw it to these different quadrants of the zone exactly where you want. But yeah, I don't I don't need an umpire to dictate what the game is like for me as a fan. I want to watch the best athletes, the best competitors, them on the field, and I don't even want to know what the umpire's name is. But it's different from how I coach my kids because I want them to never argue with the umpire and just accept the game. So
yeah, yeah. That's awesome. That's it's such a interesting conversation, and I it moves me on to this next question of the. I know the minor leagues, I think it's AAA, AA. They implemented robo umps, and my take is I don't approve of it because of the human aspect. And I would much rather, like you stated, I would much rather have an ump there with an ABS system in to get the calls right, rather than a Chinese backflipping robot, karate kicking robot,
Right.
one of those things. And so I don't know. I'm really not a big proponent for robo umps.
Mm.
I understand, based on your argument, I understand the reasoning behind it, and I get the fact of getting calls right, the accuracy of it, with the ABS system where they can track the ball and they literally show point inches off of all this stuff. And so to that measure, I do agree, and I do like the idea of the accuracy, but I am not a fan of taking humans out of the game in
Mhm.
order to make the game better. And I just think that to go back to your point, I also think baseball will always be America's pastime, and I think it's doing a disservice to the game to take humans out and put technology in. And so my thought is I would much rather have this ABS system and people would be able to challenge rather than having robo bumps. But I'd love to hear what your thoughts are.
All right. I hope everybody enjoyed the conversation with Brian, talking about who he was, introduction to his story, his love for the Dodgers, and how it shaped his life. Some nuances about strategy and how we can sort of think critically about baseball, how the game of baseball has changed, how it has evolved over the past years, and what does the future look like. The current ABS system, the T-Mobile ABS system that's in right now in MLB, and also the human element that exists within the baseball and within sport itself. So hope you enjoyed the episode. Episode number 2 will be out in the coming weeks. We'll be talking about a couple of more really interesting topics. So stay tuned.